The aristocrat's otherworldly adventure, serving gods who go too far, begins with Shinya was an orphan boy that reincarnated into a different world after accidentally meeting his doom. In this new world, however, the 7 gods bestowed upon him a cheat leveling system, granting him stats to become the most overpowered human ever. While walking home one day, Shinya saw people rushing out of a store chaotically, and 2 girls tripped right next to him. The thief waved his knife around and began sprinting towards the ladies. But instead of abandoning them, Shinya rushed towards him, tackling him down. He screamed at the girls to escape, but before he knew it, he began bleeding out of his stomach, causing the bandit to run away in fear. In his last moments, he was glad to have saved those 2 girls, but wished he didn't end up making them cry. His consciousness began fading, but when he opened his eyes, he found himself in a mysterious room. A maid began crying and calling him Cain, confusing him. His mother, Sarah, came to hug Cain, asking him if he remembers his mother. None of this makes any sense to Cain, but when he takes a single glance at the mirror, he begins panicking, wondering who he's become. After being in a coma for a week, the maid thinks that his fever is messing with his memory. His mother asks Sylvia to go and prepare him soup, and after they leave the room, Cain still has no idea how he's become a child. He wonders if he's an anime protagonist in an isekai. This guy's onto us without wasting any time. He begins investigating his entire room to find any overpowered weapons, but it appears he still has an Asian persuasion. Sylvia thinks he wet himself, but poor Cain cries for losing all his manhood. After she left the room, Cain was able to extract all the information he wanted out of her. His name is Cain von Silford. What a fucking name. A 3-year-old boy born to Garm and Sarah with a sister called Reen. However, Garm is a top G and has a second wife, Maria, and she's given birth to his 2 older siblings. His father is a high-ranking margrave and commands an army to protect his kingdom's borders from a forest of monsters. Cain is excited to hear there's monsters, but the maid tells him there's adventurers who can wield magic, and Cain gets excited. Sylvia promises to teach him some magic as long as he can learn to read, so he begins practicing right away. When Cain learned about magic, he knew he wanted to live the rest of his life here, because in his last world, his parents had already perished and his last relative, his grandpa, had just passed away, leaving him with nothing to miss. During dinner, Garm learns that his son can write and Reen tells him that he can do math already as well. Sarah thinks her son is a genius, but Cain compliments Sylvia for being the best maid in the world. His parents get suspicious about why he became studious out of nowhere, and Sylvia sticks the milk that she extracted from his mother's plot. Garm wishes he was there to witness the extraction. Cain explains that he just wants to learn all about this world so he can become an adventurer, and Garm commends him on being so motivated. To help him pursue his curiosity, Garm allows him to read all of his magic books, but warns him that he won't be able to use magic until he's baptized at the age of 5. His mother thinks he won't be able to use magic until then anyways, but the mischievous plot maker is already cooking up fire with his hand. He realizes that he can already use magic and has achieved every otaku's dream, but while casting his next spell, his hands burn and he begins losing control. Cain thinks that these magical abilities will allow him to become the strongest edge lord. The only thing left to complete his otaku dreams is a cis-con relationship to top this all off. Oh wait, there we go. Reen sneaks into the room, telling him that she's discovered all about his secrets. She's discovered that he's been studying the outside world in secret, and Cain is glad that his sister is an idiot. From then on, his sister taught him all about the outside world and about the first adventurer who built this kingdom, Yuya. Cain realizes that this guy is from a different anticlimax video, but decides to just ignore it. After learning all about the wonders of the world, he couldn't wait 2 more years until his baptism. But the day finally came. He walked inside with his new outfit, and his family was impressed by how handsome he'd become. They head off with horse carriages throughout the entire town, and Cain is surprised to see this medieval-looking world for the first time. He's curious about the blessing of the gods, so he asks his sister to see her status window. He's marveled by all of her stats, but sees she has the broken status. She immediately tells him to forget whatever he just saw, and Cain pretends he has no idea what she's talking about. His father explains that there are multiple levels to the protections granted. Each magic protection is given between level 1 to 5, and they're given by the gods to determine one's prowess in a specific field. They head to the church for Cain to receive his protections, and the priest begins the baptism. Before their eyes, the pillars of the gods begin to shine a blinding light, and Cain is teleported to meet with all 7 gods. They welcome him by his real name, Shinya, and Cain wonders what the hell. Sorry, I meant what the heaven is going on. Xenom, the god of creation, introduces himself, but Cain thinks that Christmas came early this year because this nutcase looks like Santa Claus. Xenom tells him that he can hear everything he's thinking, and moves on to talk about his reincarnation. Cain's death was unexpected because in reality, even if he didn't stop the criminal, he would have fallen and everyone would have restrained him. He's basically just a useless weeb who ice-kai himself because he wanted to simp over 2 girls. The goddess apologizes for being so harsh, but since he met his doom for a good deed, they reincarnated him to keep his life going. Even though he looks stupid, Cain isn't upset one bit. After all, he's been reincarnated into a loving family and can now use magic, which is one of his dreams. Reno, the god of magic, bestows upon him the protection of magic since he's been working so hard. Xenom grants him his protection as well, along with the god of war, making him the strongest jujutsu warrior there is. The god of technology grants him a bigger brain so he can stop simping over women. And the god of commerce grants him the judgment ability and item box so he can become the richest top G. The god of earth comes and gives him the greatest protection of all, the power to develop plot. Xenom tells him that his status window will show him the effect of all of his protections and starts laughing before sending him back. The priest has never seen the statues shining so much, so Garm asks to see his status window right away. However, Cain has a bad feeling about this, so he runs away to the bathroom to check his status. It's worse than he ever expected, because every single one of his protections is level 10, double the highest level in this world. Cain knows that he needs to hide all of them, and sees a secret ability granted to him called Status Conceal, which he uses to hide his strength. That night at lunch, Cain sat with his family who wished him a happy birthday. Garm asks him if they could finally see his status window, so he goes on to show it in front of everyone. All of his family is left in disbelief as he's received the protection from all 7 gods and has magic over 340,000. He's only 5 years old and is stronger than most mages in this entire nation, so his father panics and makes him promise to keep his stats a secret. Cain reluctantly agrees and goes to bed, seeing the notebook about summoning magic in front of him. Knowing that Sylvia won't be around, he tries to do his first summon to get a cute animal. In his mansion's backyard, he activates the summoning circle, but a giant monster appears from the inside. His sister and Parma scream in fear, and it's just like the last time he remembered. But this time, he promises it will be different, so he rushes to tackle the monster, but it punches him away and crushes his stomach. Even with all the pain, Cain promises that he will no longer allow the people he cares about to cry. He wants to protect others, so he uses all of the energy in his body to cast a spell that makes the monster disappear. As he lies on the floor, he sees the fluffy cat ears and wishes he could have touched them just one last time. He wishes he didn't have to make people cry again, and worries that he's going to get isekai. After a few minutes, however, Cain wakes up and realizes that he's still alive. This time, the people he tried to protect aren't crying. In this world, he realizes that his powers can actually help save people. On the day of his birthday ceremony, his father asks him what he aspires to become in his future. Cain reveals to everyone that he wants to travel across the lands and help all sorts of people, so in order to protect everyone's smiles, he will become an adventurer. After hearing the determination in his voice, Garm promised to hire a tutor for him. Inside his bedroom, he wondered what his tutor would be like, but she had finally arrived. Cain was so excited that he ran to the window and accidentally teleported outside, falling in the most convenient position possible. He apologized to the girl, and the butler introduced Cain's 2 tutors, Millie and Nina. Inside the mansion, Millie struggles while she fantasizes about why Garm has been given the title biggest wit in the country. But Cain is too busy noticing that Nina is an elf. Garm says they don't need to be so formal, and Cain asks them to talk with him as if he was their friend. Millie is excited to finally teach him, and they begin lessons right away. Inside the mansion's training area, Cain demonstrates his swordsmanship prowess, which shocks Millie. To evaluate Cain's abilities, she asks him for a mock duel. Immediately, Cain rushes forward to strike towards her, and she barely manages to hold him back. Nina wonders if he's received the war god's blessing, and Cain says he was supposed to keep that a secret. Millie gazes out and begs Nina to teach him some magic before his sword penetrates her insides. Nina reveals that she has a level 3 magic protection, but Cain has already learned all the basics. He demonstrates his ability to summon magic from all the elements, and his spells are so powerful that they pierce through stone targets. Cain reveals that he's received the protection from the magic god as well, and Millie worries that they can't teach him anything after all. He pulls out a towel from his item box, and the girls realize that they're basically useless. If they were to try to teach him anything over here, he would end up destroying the entire manor. So Cain suggests they go outside the mansion to study. He's never left the premises, so Millie and Nina think it would be better for him to go outside anyway. They explain to Garm that Cain's abilities will destroy the mansion, and Garm panics when he finds out his son is this strong on the first day. He knew this day would come eventually, but hoped Cain would mature more first. Reluctantly, Garm agrees to let him go outside on the condition that he never enters the forest. Cain promises that he will, and he leaves the mansion for the first time with his tutors. Nina begins with his magic training and asks him to demonstrate his intermediate level magic. Immediately, Cain readies a fire spell and casts it towards the stone, knocking both of the girls and leaving a giant crater where the stone once was. They wonder if consuming all that mana has tired him out, but Cain hasn't broken a single sweat. As he laughed off his accomplishment, Millie realized there were enemies nearby, and a rabbit jumped out from the bushes to attack Millie, but her attack missed. It rushed towards Cain, but he dodged the rabbit and shot air bullets to defeat it. Millie wondered if he was going to sell the drops, but Cain wanted to show it to his family, so he stored it in his item box. Millie is amazed since she's been saving up for years to get a magic bag, a less powerful version of his item box. In the meantime, Nina uses her search ability to scan within 300 meters for monsters. Cain thinks what she did was cool, so he tries to copy the same spell, casting it to locate the exact location of the 4 rabbits, surprising Nina that someone could even count the specific number of monsters. He runs towards it, and Millie tells her that she should just give up already. They defeat all of the rabbits together. However, one of them runs away and Cain tries to pursue it. But Millie warns him to never go inside the forest since it has legendary monsters living inside. Every few decades, all the monsters try to break into the city, which is why their wall is so fortified. Cain realizes how dangerous it is, but wishes to one day explore it on his own. That night he realized that he'd already reached level 8 after beating just a few rabbits. He investigated the reason for his massive level up, and saw that the God-chosen title granted him 100 times more XP. But not only that, each level up granted him 100 times the ability points. Cain's power has already surpassed most humans, and he's realized that the entire nation is going to try and get rid of him if this continues. A few months later, Millie takes Cain to the Adventurers Guild so he can fight some stronger monsters. Inside, Rudy asks what brings him here today, and Millie wants to acquire some quests that would be perfect for Cain. However, a man comes and mocks Millie and Nina for being D-rankers and babysitting a child. Since she's a D rank, he tells her to ditch the kid so he can show her what a real D looks like. Nina tells him to back off, but Cross is fed up with her disrespect and picks her up while 2 others restrain Millie. As he's about to grab her face, Cain holds his arm and says that he will not allow him to treat his tutors like that. Millie begs Cain to run, but Cain tells him that he needs to start training and smacks him in the face. Cross recovers and tries punching him, but Cain evades and destroys his footwork, saying that his name is Cain, but Cross continues trying to fight against him. He grabs a knife and tries to strike towards Cain with incredible speed, but Cain evades every single one of the attacks, going as far as to even hold his sword with his fingers and throwing him out. The other 2 hold a knife to Millie, but Cain makes quick work of them and kicks them out. Nina comes to hug Cain, promising that she'll protect him next time. After years of training and enjoying their time together, Cain has grown into a charming tall man. Sylvia lets him know that his final class with his tutors will be in a few days, and Cain is excited because he wishes to find a way to thank them. He remembers that Millie wanted a magic bag, so that night Cain snuck into the deepest parts of the dark forests. A blood ogre appeared before him. Next, he defeated an earth dragon, and the guards thought that a monster rampage was about to commence this decade. The entire army was deployed, and Garm led the troops to defeat them. Cain collected everything he's came to get and teleports away, leaving behind his towel. Garm arrives at the scene, and his subordinate informs him that all the monsters have been eliminated in the forest. Wondering who could be so overpowered, Garm looks at the ground to find his towel, shocking every bone in his body. The final day of Cain's tutoring arrives, leaving Millie and Nina with a bittersweet feeling for having been with him all this time. They come and let him know that today will be his graduation, and congratulate him on working hard for the last 3 years. Cain thanks them for all the time they've been with him, so he hopes that the magical bags he's created for them will show them how grateful he is. He's collected the materials from the blood ogre and earth dragon inside the forest, but he tells them not to worry, because they're just regular bags that won't hold too much, just an entire mansion. Millie tells him that the most expensive magic bag can only carry 2 carriages worth of items, so this magic bag would be national treasure class. Millie's worried people would try to rob them of it, but Cain reveals that he's enchanted them so that if anyone else carries these bags, they'll be as heavy as everything held inside of them. Millie and Nina thank him for doing all this, and they both get on their knees for him. They tell him that if he ever needs their help when he grows up, he can always come to them and they can help him with anything he needs help with. At that moment, their contract was over and Cain felt like he grew a little more, and so did I. Months later, inside a deep cave, Cain battled against a red dragon and struck it once, defeating it instantly. He's defeated one of the strongest mobs in existence, so when he examined his level, he realized his magic was over 80 million, and he's earned the title Dragon Slayer. 2 years have passed since that day, and Cain is finally 10 years old and will be attending a noble event to commemorate his birthday. It will take a week to reach their destination as long as monsters don't interrupt their travels, so Cain casts his search ability to scan a 3-kilometer radius. He discovers monsters have ambushed soldiers ahead and tells his dad to hurry so they can try to save the people. However, the horses are too slow, so Cain jumps out of the carriage like Spider-Man and activates his wind magic, dashing towards the source of the monsters. The soldiers are cornered and are about to all be defeated. But Cain jumps in and saves one of the soldiers. He continues flying around, using his air cutter ability to decimate every single one of the monsters in his way. Still, a few beasts charge towards the carriage, so Cain summons his sword and destroys them with a single swing until he faces the boss. Immediately, he dodges the beast and jumps into the sky, enchanting his sword with fire before ending the monster in his way. The soldier warns him to stay away from the carriage, so Cain tries to introduce himself as the son of Garm. Just then, Garm's soldiers arrive and realize they're completely useless. The soldier collapses from losing all of the blood, so Cain holds him tight and activates his healing ability, helping every single soldier recover instantly. Garm finally arrives and sees the terrible scene that unfolded before him, but instantly recognizes the crest on the carriage as the royal families. From inside, 2 girls appear, Telestia, the princess, and Silk, the duke's daughter. They thank Garm for saving both of them, but Garm lets them know that it was his son Cain who saved them. Telestia nearly faints, so Cain goes on to use a relaxing spell to make her feel better. The light soothes all of their pain and anxiety away, but the little suckers enchanted it with some other type of magic. Immediately, Telestia runs over and thanks him for saving them. Silk holds his hand and thinks he's the greatest swordsman she's ever seen, but Telestia says that he's going to be hers, and they begin fighting over him. They drag him to their carriage and take him away in front of his father's eyes. Inside their huge carriage, Cain wonders why they're sitting so close to him, but Telestia is too scared for him to leave her. She tells him to call her Teles, and Silk asks him to call her Silk. His spell was too strong, and they continue trying to charm him until he succumbs. The soldier informs them that they're finally approaching the rest area, and Cain thinks that this is a mess, but the girls want to rest with him after they arrive. At the rest area, Cain tries to escape this situation, but Telestia and Silk tell him that they want to spend the night with him or they'll be scared. Garm tries to say that it's inappropriate, but the girls claim they're too traumatized and are afraid of a dragon to come attack them. Garm says that he can take care of it, but Silk tells him that he's worthless compared to Cain. They beg Cain to stay the night with them, and he accepts if they would separate the beds as far as possible. Garm says he may have 2 wives, but he should be careful because he has to deal with twice the headaches. Inside the bedroom, the girls beg him to sleep next to them, and they push the beds close to each other. But pushing the beds next to each other wasn't enough, so they decide to use Cain like a body pillow all night. The poor Giga Chad has created his own harem at the age of 10. But he's already learned that he would rather be single for the rest of his life. He didn't get any sleep the entire night, but after a few more sleepless nights, he finally arrived at the capital. The head knight greets them, and they continue clinging on to Cain. The knight bows to honor Cain's presence, having already heard the news of how Cain heroically saved everyone. As for the ones who were fallen, Cain's item box allowed him to return their bodies to their families. The bell rings and Cain tries to dip, but the knight informs him that he's going to be meeting with the king. Inside the heart of the castle, every major politician has gathered for Cain's audience with the king. He takes a bow and the king's count commends him for being able to save Telestia and Silk from all 50 orcs single-handedly to reward him for his bravery. The king bestows upon him a mansion, 10 platinum coins, and the honorary title of Baron. Some of the politicians think this is controversial and Corgino in and say it's not fair to be getting a child such wealth. The king tells Corgino to learn how to stop opening his mouth before he stays fat his whole life. King says he would have never been able to save the girls in his position. This kingdom needs more knights like Cain, so the king's decision will not change, sending Corgino running away. The king asks if Cain will accept. With no room for objection, Cain humbly accepts all the awards, but the king isn't done with him and wants to talk with him in private. Garm and Cain wait to meet with him, and his father congratulates him on getting his own mansion before his other boys. The king enters along with the 2 girls, and Cain realizes that he can't tell the king about his daughter calling him daddy last night. The knight thanks Cain for saving his daughter, and the duke also expresses his gratitude for saving his daughter, Silk. The king tells him that there's something important that he's come to discuss and asks him if he would take his daughter's and the duke's daughter's hands. He wouldn't be married yet, but they will wait until he's an adult. After all, he linked arms with them and slept with 2 unmarried ladies. No one will ever take them as brides now, and he better accept this offering before he faces the wrath of the gods. Earlier on, this genius idea was concocted by the count to investigate the true identity of Cain, but the king was shocked to find out that both of their daughters wanted to marry Cain. Hearing of his great accomplishments, he was determined to keep Cain in this kingdom, and Cain thinks that this is the worst possible situation he's found himself in. Cain's father offers no advice, and the pressure of the entire situation begins to collapse onto him. With no other option but to give in, Cain accepts to become their husband. Telestia and Silk think they will never forget the nights they spent together, and Cain explains it was just a misunderstanding because of all the different positions they had to do. They ask him what the fuck he's saying, and Cain tries to say that he meant the position of the beds. Poor guy can't get a break. A few days later, Cain visited the royal church to meet with the gods. Zinum wondered what took him so long, but Cain explains that his stats had become too overwhelming. With his current stats, Cain's become the strongest human alive, so Zinum asked him if he would like to become a demigod. But even with a status like that, there are still limits to what Cain can achieve alone, so Zinum advises him to make strong relationships. He goes on to ask Cain if he would create some entertainment based on his knowledge from his previous life. Cain thinks he can create the perfect game, and Zinum and the god of technology beg him to create something like that. Later that day, Rein was shopping for some clothes, and Cain has had enough of her bro-con obsession. He ran out and noticed Parma outside, the girl he saved 5 years ago. Her uncle, Timanus, introduces himself to Cain and is shocked to find out that he's a noble. Cain asks him to just treat him like every other kid and asks him to browse his shop. It's an antique store where every item is crafted by Timanus, so Cain asks him if he could make a special order for him. Timanus is interested, so Cain shows him the blueprints of the game he's trying to create, with such an interesting concept. Timanus thinks this would be a great hit, so Cain asks him to create a prototype and pays him a full gold coin for it. Timanus couldn't accept such a high payment, but Cain tells him that he should treat it like an investment into their relationship. Timanus humbly accepts and promises that he will create the best game board for him. Cain is glad and leaves the store, but finds out that Rein is ready to destroy him for disappearing on her. She asks him why he didn't see all the clothes she tried on for him, but Cain says she would look like shit in all of them anyway. Rein is glad to hear that her brother thinks she's ugly, because she's going to teach him the hard way what he's supposed to say to her. This bitch is scary. She spends all night trying on different outfits to try and impress her Ani-Chan, and will now punish him by having him try them on. However, Sylvia comes in to save the day and informs him that Timanus has finished the prototype. Cain is amazed that it looks exactly like the reverse he imagined. They spend the afternoon playing the game together, and Timanus thinks this will become the next trend and is positive it will become a bestseller. Cain suggests they create a fancier version for the nobles, since he's sure the wealthier people will want a fancier product. To begin with, Cain suggests making 50 of the noble version and 1,000 of the normal version. Timanus thinks he's a genius, but his company can't afford to create such a large inventory all at once. So Cain smashes some gold coins on the table like a top G. Timanus promises he will create all of the boards as quick as possible. to make sure their product isn't stolen. They create an off-brand patent by presenting the board to the commerce god and vow their commitment to the contract. The board begins to glow a golden hue in front of them, fulfilling their contract with the gods. Cain makes one more request and asks him if they could create an extravagant game for the royal family. Timanes is honored that his company would ever be considered for such a project, and Parma thinks he's amazing for having connections with the king. Cain thinks she doesn't even know half of the story because the gods are probably enjoying the game he just created for them. The next day is the debut ceremony, so Garm warns Cain to watch out for parents introducing their daughters to him. Cain says he won't because he's a top G and will create the largest harem, and Garm is shocked that his son is so ruthless. Inside the castle, Cain sees Corgina with his children and thinks he looks nasty. The Duke and Silk meet each other, but his smile scares Cain. The Duke thanks him for saving his daughter and hopes they will have a favorable relationship. And Cain realizes that he's screwed, but he won't back down. In front of her own father, Cain tells Silk that she's the most beautiful girl in all of the lands and promises that he will never leave her, unlike her father's ex-wife who cheated on him because he was so useless and ugly. Garm won't allow someone to roast his own son, so he tells the Duke that he's Silk's real father. It's an evil world we live in. They walk off and Garm tells Cain that he definitely destroyed every bit of his confidence, and Cain says he's glad he was born to such a jigga-chad. These fuckers are straight up savages. The royal guards blow the trumpets and the king makes his entrance. Cain doesn't care about anything he's saying because he's too smitten with the princess's beauty. After his speech, Cain greets the king and says that she's more beautiful than a goddess and her presence has him choking harder than she. He decides to not say that part, but then Cain promises Telestia that he will never leave her, unlike the queen who's constantly sleeping with the royal guards who hurt this dude. The king tells Garm that he's a worthless dad for raising such a mistake of a child, but Cain goes on to say, "I'm about to end this man's whole career." Cain goes on to apologize for all his banter and gives the king with a gift as an apology. It is the reversey game he's developed with the company, and the king wants to hear all about it after finding out what his daughter has been actually saying. He commands him to come to his room later or he'll be executed, and Cain reluctantly agrees. Garm asks Cain when he became such a business magnate, and Cain says he needed to do this in order to take care of his mansion since he's richer than his own broke dad. Garm accepts the insult since all he's ever desired was for his children to become more successful than him, but wants Cain to make sure he can make friends with children his age. Cain is glad to have such a caring dad who helps him roast everyone, but just then, Silk comes and tries to steal him away. They sit together and Silk tries to make sure Telestia doesn't have a chance with him. But Corgina's children come to interrupt their party. The guy says that she's wearing a beautiful dress, but Silk does her best to not say a word to him. One of his lackeys tells Cain that he should get out when Habit is having a private conversation. Cain tries to introduce himself, but Habit tells Cain that he should apologize for bothering Mrs. Silk, upsetting her. Cain tells her that he'll make Habit apologize first, and he tells her that he's being rude right now. Habit is infuriated and tells Cain to meet him in the parking lot, but they don't have cars in this world, so they meet in the field. Silk is worried that Cain is going to be destroyed, so she does everything she can to hug him. But Habit is tired of not getting any attention, so he tells him to begin the battle already. Silk doesn't give two shits what he's saying and hugs Cain tighter so he can protect her. Corgina's lackeys get angry, and they do some rain dance to make the lightning strike towards them. The next lackey thinks he can do the rain dance better, so he begins summoning his spell. So Silk tells them to stop all this crap already because Cain isn't just any ordinary child, he's a baron. Silk says that he's the third son of Margrave Garm. Silk says he saved the princess from an army of 30 orcs. She tells him his name is Cain. Cornigo and his lackeys bow to Cain, begging for his forgiveness and run away like cockroaches. After they leave, Silks realize he could have revealed his status this whole time, but just wanted to make them look dumb, so she'll tell the princess about it. Cain begs her not to, but Silk promises that she'll keep it a secret if they go on a date together. Telestia comes in and asks what they're keeping a secret, so Cain immediately stops Silk from speaking. Telestia tells him that she's going to tell on him for being so intimate with Silk, but Silk reveals that they're going on a date together. Telestia is jealous that she's been left out and wants Cain to make it up to her by going on a date with her as well. He thinks she looks cute, so he promises to go on a date with her. The king comes from behind and asks what he just said. Cain realizes that he's raised a monster, and the king says that they're going to have a long man-to-man talk. And Cain realizes that he's finally going to be executed for all the jokes he's been saying. Indeed, the king executed him, and this is the end of the story. This is so tragic. Please spam Rip Cain in the comments section because Silk and Telestia will now be widows. The next day, Cain reincarnates back because he's that overpowered, and when the king found out, he was about to execute him again. But the count did everything in his power to save Cain. The Duke comes in and congratulates him on his revival, but wants to play the creator in a game of Reversi along with the rest of the palace, and Cain wishes he would have never been revived. After a week of hiding from the king, Cain is finally ready to see his mansion. He sees it's a rundown mansion that hasn't been maintained in years. With his magic, he investigates all of the rooms and decides to begin cleaning. With his magical powers, the entire mansion along with the backyard is automatically cleaned and repaired. Every one of the rooms returns to brand new, and Sylvia has finally made it here. She was extremely happy to hear that she's going to be his personal maid, so she's brought along an entire harem of maids and a butler to help him take care of all the nobility matters. Sylvia tries telling the maids to begin cleaning right away, but they tell her that there's not a speck of dust anywhere. Cain reveals that he cleaned everything up with magic, and Colin is surprised how nobody was shocked with his abilities. Sylvia begins preparing to receive all of Cain's items, and Colin tells him to start heading home. Cain has completely forgotten that his older brothers will be coming home today. Back at Garm's mansion, Cain's brothers congratulate him on getting his own mansion before any of them, and they're glad that he's their younger brother. Cain shows his family around his new mansion, but Garm is confused because he remembers it being completely run down and destroyed. He asks Cain if he's the one responsible. Cain says he just remodeled it with a little magic, and Sarah is proud that she raised such a strong son unlike Garm's other wife. He goes on to take them for a tour of the house, but Garm wishes that Cain had decorated more. Nobles in this generation show their class with paintings, vases, and even mounted monsters. Cain thinks he has the perfect solution, so he disappears for a second to put one up. Just as he comes back, Sylvia begins screaming in fear, and all the maids are scared of the red dragon in front of them. Garm asks Cain what the meaning of this is, and Cain tries to say that this is a red dragon. Garm says no shit Sherlock, but wants to know why he has such a thing here in the first place. So Cain says that he defeated it alone. It's a calamity level beast that's never been defeated before. But Garm is glad to have such a strong son. A mounted red dragon is worth 10,000 platinum coins in this world, and Cain realizes that it's actually worth $100 million in his old world. Just then, Sarah screams in fear and they run together towards the bathroom. Sarah asks him what the toilet is because it's made her feel better than Garm ever did. Thinking she's just exaggerating, Garm tries to investigate for himself after he goes inside. Garm realizes that he's been missing out his entire life and thinks it will impress the visitors, but Cain wonders why he would ever have visitors. When a noble owns a mansion, they must hold a debut party and invite all the nobles, Garm explains, but doesn't want to deal with all of that again and wishes he was just a brokey. Colin tells him he's prepared a list of people to invite to make things easier for him. As he looked through the list, Cain noticed Corgino has been invited, but wishes he never had to see his face again. The only one that wasn't on the list was the king because only counts or higher-ranked nobles can invite royalty. Cain realizes all the preparation and gifts he has to prepare, but has no idea what he could gift any of them. Sylvia suggests for Cain to create his own type of gifts along with his unique form of hospitality, and this inspires him using his magical abilities. He makes a cup made of glass since porcelain is the only material used for tableware. As for the food, Cain plans on serving everyone hamburgers, and Sylvia thinks it's the best food she's ever tasted. As for the drink, she takes a sip of carbonated wine and loves every bit of it, but says that she doesn't know how she feels about it. She wants to get another glass. She continues drinking all the bottles, but Colin comes to inform him that the king has requested his audience. He's infuriated with Cain and asks him why he hasn't received an invitation to his debut party yet. He slams the desk and says that he's the one who's given him the mansion, but the Duke waves his invitation in his face and says it's clear that Silk is the better daughter. The king is ready to cry and says that he's disappointed in how he's treating his future father-in-law. Cain tries to tell him the truth, saying that he's never been given the opportunity to hand him an invitation since he's so busy, so he's hand-delivered it for him today. The king takes it and shows off to his friends like a middle school girl who just got a love letter and informs Cain that Telestia will be attending as well. The night of the debut party arrives and Cain invites everyone inside. The Duke arrives along with Silk and Cain calls her the most beautiful. They see his red dragon statue and Silk can't wait until she lives here with him. Colin informs Cain that it's the time for his address, and Cain thanks everyone for attending and hopes that his meager offering will please all of them. He raises the drink for a toast and his parents try it out, loving the fizzy taste of it. Even the glasses impress them as they look like treasure chests, and Cain lets them know that he personally prepared them as gifts for everyone to take home. The Cain arrives and sees the beautiful drink waiting for him. After a single sip, he experiences the heavenly feeling of the soda fizzing in his mouth. As for the meal, he takes a bite of the hamburger and eats the meat until it squeezes the nice creamy white liquid. This is the first time he's experienced such a delicate combination of cheese and meat, and it feels like a harmony in his mouth. Telestia is enjoying Cain's meat. The queen tells the king that she just experienced a different kind of climax, and begs Cain to install the same sprayer in the royal bathroom. Wondering what she's talking about, the king tries it out in climax so loud that everyone hears him. He exits the room like nothing happened and scolds Cain for withholding the sprayer from him because he needs it installed in his bathroom immediately. Cain promises he will, and the king says that his hospitality shows in everything including the food in his house, chanting that this is the ultimate hospitality. The entire crowd claps to congratulate Cain, filling him with joy for his efforts having been recognized. However, Colin informs him that trouble is on the way. Corgino comes and calls Cain's mansion a doghouse as he walks in, so Cain doesn't let Colin inform him about the dragon statue. He screams in terror and Cain apologizes that his expensive red dragon caught him off guard. He tries to walk it off and calls his taste poor, but everyone thinks Corgino's attitude is vile for a person who arrived after the king. At the table, Sylvia offers him some of the carbonated wine, and he says it looks disgusting, but loves every sip of it. Cain offers him a hamburger, and he calls it disgusting but continues eating every last bit of it. All of the nobles had noticed his mistreatment of Cain, and Colin warns him to try and stay composed, which gives him a brilliant idea. He brings Corgino glasses and explains that they're just a meager offering. Corgino says they're meager all right, but wants every single one of them along with the recipe for the hamburger. Cain rejects because he's going to gift them to everyone here. But Corgino is frustrated and screams at Cain to give him 100 glasses immediately. Cain apologizes and tries to stall as another red object approaches. He says he's willing to offer the kingdom's biggest object, even more amazing than a jewel, making Corgino excited to take it right away. He tells him to please accept the kingdom's biggest, and the king appears from behind him. This catches him by surprise, and Corgino wonders why he's at such a lowly person's home. The king furiously responds that Cain saved his daughter, and the duke wonders if he came after the king. Regardless of Corgino's lies, the king threatens to take his ranking away and continues mistreating Cain. Trying to weasel his way out of this, Corgino claims he was just impressed by the meal and the hospitality, but the king tells him to start behaving like an actual noble and commands him to flee. Silk comes up to Cain and knows that he set all of this up, and the duke asks if he used them. A week later, Cain was walking when he was approached by Captain Dame. He was sent by the Prime Minister to leave some monster materials, so Dame leads him to the storage room. However, Cain thinks that this room is way too small. Dame is caught off guard and wonders if they're all the size of the red dragon in his mansion. But Cain says it's nothing like that, just the legendary earth dragon that a whole party of the strongest adventurers couldn't take down. Dame is shocked, but tells Cain to leave the monsters in the middle of the field, so Cain releases all of them from his item box. Seeing the sheer number of rare monsters, Dame asks Cain if he's a hero or a disciple of the gods, causing Cain to panic for a second. He says goodbye and tries to leave, but Dame asks him if he would like to train with the other knights and meet their leader. Cain realizes he's in deep once more. This was how the entire army was facing off against him, but let's see how this started. Dame had introduced Cain to the rest of the soldiers and informed them that they will be dueling him, but one of the soldiers wonders if they should really be battling against a 10-year-old. Since he was so worried, Dame suggested for him to fight Cain first. The soldier allows Cain to have the first move, and Cain happily agrees. In an instant, he activates his boost ability and vanishes before the man's eyes, defeating him with a single slash. Cain thanks him and begins trying to leave, but Dame says that he should try fighting all of them at once. That was how we ended up in this situation. But just as Cain was about to be destroyed, the leader screamed at all of them to hold their position. She asked them why the entire army is about to fight a little child and hugged him to try and comfort him. Cain is too bewildered by her being an elf, and she asks Dame why he's put the child in this situation. Dame tries to explain that Cain was actually the one who saved the princess from 30 orcs alone. She finally understands, and she begs Cain to duel against her with a menacing aura. All the soldiers think that Cain lived a nice 10 years and wish him a happy afterlife. Cain asks her why she's holding an actual sword, but she tells him it makes things more interesting and begins rushing towards him. Cain attempts to fight her off, but her agility allows her to evade beautifully. She boosts her physical abilities and they rush towards each other and clash their swords. The soldiers are impressed that there's someone who can match her speed. Cain continues trying to parry her blows and create opportunities, but her defense is too strong. He resorts to using clock up and sprints towards her. But just then, he vanishes before her eyes and teleports next to her, pointing his sword at her throat. Cain says the duel is over, but she's just experienced the greatest climax in all of her life. She hugs Cain and tells him that she's going to be marrying him. Cain tells her that he hasn't even known her for 10 minutes, and she thinks he has a good point. She introduces herself as Tifana, the daughter of a duke, and even though she may be older, she reassures him that elves can reach 300 years of age, so she will remain young for a long time. Cain runs away from this creep and says that she needs her father's approval first, but she tells him it's not a problem. Her family knew she would be lonely forever, so they won't allow her to return home until she's found a spouse. Still, Cain isn't okay with it because he needs to ask an entire army of people for permission first, and asks Dame to back him up, but he's already fell asleep. The leader comes to her senses and tells Dame that she's going to meet with the king to make things better. Cain thinks this is the worst possible outcome, and Dame drags Cain to the king inside the king's castle. The king wonders why Cain has come back already. Tifana gets up and even her voice changes as she tells him that they're going to get married. The king asks what's the meaning of this, and Cain explains that he beat her with his wooden stick so hard and penetrated deep into her defenses, so that's where they're at now. The other girls haven't heard of this, but that isn't the main issue. Garm explains that Tifana isn't just the leader of the army, she comes from a kingdom filled with elves, and she's basically their princess. The king breaks the sad news to her, saying that Cain is already engaged to his daughter along with the dukes. Shocked by what she just learned, she thinks that Cain must be so incredibly amazing to have smitten both his daughter and the dukes. The king knows how hard it must be, but Tifana thinks that she wants to marry him even more now. All of them wonder what type of copium she's taking, because I sure want some of it, but the king says he will only discuss this after she's gained her father's permission. Tifana gladly accepts and tells Cain to come along. He wonders where, and she tells him that they're going to be battling with their sticks to deepen their love. The king wonders how the strongest knight in the entire kingdom was defeated, and he asks Garm if he knows the story behind Cain. However, Garm himself doesn't know anything about him at all, but Dame remembers him panicking when he brought up the gods, so the king became suspicious. The count thinks they can test him by showing him that. The mythical book, Cain walks around, about to pass out from all the training for the last week. Just then, he hears her voice calling out for him, and he tries to run away, but Dame grabs him and drags him to the king's room. Here we fucking go again. The king asks Cain why he's appearing to be so sad, and Cain says he's tired of seeing his ugly ass. The king tells him that he's brought him here to show him something. The count shows the book, an emperor-level magic text that's been passed down from the first king, Yuya. Cain asks if he can read this book, and the king gives him permission. He opens the book and realizes that he's seen all these spells, and is glad to have learned now how to cast them. The king has finally realized it. He explains that the text in the book is one that none of them can read. Cain inspects it once more and realizes what he just read. The king explains that this text was written by the first king in a language called Japanese. Cain thinks it all makes sense since he definitely also reincarnated, and the king explains that no one's ever been able to read it. He asks Cain once more to explain who he truly is, and Cain realizes that he can no longer hide his true identity, but thinks he can trust these people. He asks them if they could keep everything they've heard a secret, otherwise he will have to leave this kingdom. After the king agrees, Cain goes on to reveal that he has memories from his previous life. He used to live in the same land where the first king came from, a land called Japan. He apologizes for never telling them, and Garm asks if he's truly his child. Even if he didn't want to be born to such a Berkey, the gods confirmed that Garm was his father when he turned 5. The entire room is surprised that he met with the gods, and he goes on to tell them of how they were all crazy nutcases, but he meets them all the time. Garm asks him to show him his real status, and the entire room panics when they finally see all of his levels being beyond human. The king has no idea what they're going to do. After all, the god's chosen title is the epitome of the human race, and even kings should bow to him. Cain begs him to wait because that's not what he wants. Even though he has memories of his previous life, this is the life he's always wanted to live, and has everything he's ever wanted. A loving family, overpowered abilities, and people who care about him. There's nothing more honorable than living a life like this, because in his previous life, none of his family was still alive with him. But now he's blessed with everything he could have ever dreamed for, and thanks his father for raising him all this time. He apologizes to the king for hiding the truth, but wishes for them to continue treating him the same way they always have. The king humbly accepts and promises that he will be treated the same way as everyone else. However, he wonders if Cain should just be the king instead. Just then, Tefana enters the room and shows him her father's consent to marry Cain. Here we go, another fucking girl to the harem, and she takes him away with her. The Duke tells the king not to worry because Cain will always be the same way he always has, and the king thinks they can truly trust him. He commands everyone in the room to keep this matter a secret. His only wish is for Cain to protect this kingdom, his family, the girls he cares about, and anyone who may ever need his help. In the years that followed, Cain began reading the book left by Yuya. The word said that if Cain can read this, then he is from the same home country as him, Japan. This book contains all the information about Yuya's life, including how he was ice-cad by Truck-kun. Unlike Cain, however, he wasn't reborn and was rather just summoned into this new world. Just as Cain kept reading, Silk and Telestia came and thought he was studying for the academy entrance exams. They begin offering to study with him, but Cain tells them that he doesn't have time to deal with their bullshit today. They ask him about tomorrow, but he runs off and says some other time. As he walked through the hallway, that case number 3 came sprinting towards him and asked him to train with her, but he said he will do it some other time. As he ran, he apologized to everyone, but today is a very special day for him. It's his 12th birthday. It's the day he will finally get to register as an adventurer. Inside the guild, he bumps into a red hair who notices he's young, so he reminds him that he's only got one life and to be careful. Cain wonders where he's seen that hair before, but approaches the receptionist who asks him if he would like to register. As he filled the paperwork, he decided to conceal his Baron status since it didn't have anything to do with adventuring, and handed the paper to the girl. She then asked him to prick his finger for a blood magic test, and offered him his G-rank adventurer's card. Cain remembers his tutors being D-rank, and wonders how they're doing right now. The woman introduces herself as Risha, and says it's nice to meet him. But just then, 3 guys come up and tell her to ditch the brat and hang out with them because they'll keep her company all night. Cain thinks. Their leader tries to kick Cain away but ends up falling instead. The lackeys try to retaliate and both of them rush towards him but clash into each other. Their leader prepares to draw a sword, but Cain tells him to just wait. At the same moment, the red-haired guy approaches and tells him that if he wants someone to fight, he can fight him all night. They run away after recognizing Claude, and Cain's tired of feeling déjà vu. Cain thanks Claude for his help, but Claude noticed that he would have probably destroyed them alone, so he asks him to have a drink with him. Since Cain is still 12, he gives him some fruit juice and asks him how he was able to pull off those incredible moves. Cain says he's been training since he was young with 2 tutors, and Claude is caught off guard and wonders where he's heard that before. Claude raises a cheer for him becoming an adventurer today and drink together. Cain wonders why the guys said he's with Ice Flame, so Claude reveals that the name of his party is the Ice Flame. He uses a flame sword and his wife uses ice magic, and because they trust each other, they can take big quests and rank up quickly. Cain is surprised to see a gold card since it means he's an A rank, but Claude thinks it's nothing compared to their first king who had a triple S rank. Just then, a wand hits him in the head and his wife asks him why he's drinking. Claude introduces his wife as Lena, and she slams his head to not change the subject. Cain tries to introduce himself and tells her that Claude saved him and she thinks he's a cutie. If there's any guys who bother him, Lena says she will take care of them, but Claude reveals that Cain would have covered the floor with blood if he hadn't stopped him. Lena hits him in the head and tells him to stop drinking before she covers the floor with his blood and drags him away by the ear. Poor dude was never seen again after that day. Cain wonders what quest he should take as G rank and wonders if he should just start by transporting items with his item box, but thinks that would be too boring. Instead, he sees a quest about defeating as many goblins as possible with no upper limit on the reward, so he takes the quest right away. Excitedly, he runs out of the guild, but Tefana comes running after finally finding him. She asks him what he's been doing, and he reveals that he's going on his first adventure today. So Tefana gives up all of her obligations for the day. Cain tries to run away, but Tefana drags him away again. Poor dude was never seen again after that day. Deep in the forest, Tefana is excited to spend some alone time with her husband in such beautiful scenery and drags him away while wondering where the goblins could be. Cain uses his search ability and discovers the goblins to be ahead, so Tefana tells him she will rush there, and she asks Cain to chase after her. Whatever she's on is stronger than copium, and I need some of it. As they arrive at the location of the goblins, Tefana spots a civilian who's about to be destroyed, so they teleport right away to save him. Cain casts his heal spell while Tefana rushes towards them and slashes the 3 goblins standing in her way. A bigger group approaches them, so Cain enchants her physical abilities with his magic to power her up. Tefana thanks him for filling her up with his warm magical fluid. She rushes towards the goblins to destroy all of them. Whether it's in sickness or in health, she bows to stay by his side and wants his blade for their first joint task. Cain wonders how he's always ending up with these nutcases, but the green lizards appear and Cain tells her that he will take care of it. She runs away with the man, and Cain casts his light bulb, along with an ice pillar to destroy every single one of the green lizards. Tefana thinks she has the best husband ever. Later that day, Millie and Nina wonder why there's a giant crater here instead of the green lizards, and Nina wonders why she's feeling déjà vu. Inside the guild, Cain reveals that he's defeated the green lizards and wonders if he would be able to get the rewards even though he didn't claim the quest. Ricia is confused because defeating a group of them is usually something done by C-rank adventurers, but Cain explained that he defeated about 30 of them. Ricia is shocked and runs to the chief to tell him the situation. He asks her to meet the guy immediately. Cedric introduces himself and asks Cain how he managed to get the green lizards. After all, he's a kid who's a G rank on his first quest, so there's no chance he could even kill a single lizard. Ritia tells Cedric that it's wrong to be accusing him of cheating, and Cain agrees, saying he defeated them normally. Cedric says that he was registered as a commoner, so he's likely just trying to swindle reward money, and screams that he will have his guild card removed. Cain thinks this is the worst situation ever, but just then, the guild master enters and the chief tells him that the brat over here is a cheater. The guild master sees Cain and thinks he looks interesting. He sits down and asks the chief why he thinks Cain is cheating. He hears out his reasoning and tells Cedric that he's got a lot to learn. He tells someone to come in, and Tefana enters and yells that she's glad to see her husband. Cain tells her they were supposed to keep their engagement a secret and pushes her off to ask her what she's doing. Tefana says she's here to warn the guild about all the orcs and lizards, and the guild master reveals that he's known he's a baron. The chief is surprised, and the guild master tells him that he was the one to save the princess and Silk from the orcs. He goes on to say that he's the son of Margrave Garm, and if he marries Tefana, they will become brothers-in-law. Cain is surprised that he's Tefana's brother, and the guild master asks Cedric if he's going to continue insulting his brother-in-law. Cedric instantly bows his head, and Tefana says that usually a commoner insulting a noble would get executed, but Cain says he would never do that. He accepts his apology and asks him to avoid making accusations in the future. The guild master tells Cain they will gladly accept his lizards, but he won't be able to stay at a G rank, so as a token of apology, he promises to raise his rank to C rank immediately. Tefana thinks that it's too low since he's already defeated a red dragon and beat her in duels. Cedric wonders just how strong this guy is, so Tefana's brother agrees that he should raise him all the way to a rank. He commands Richa and Cedric to take care of the paperwork, and Tefana's brother apologizes on behalf of his subordinate's rudeness. He thanks Cain for being understanding and for taking care of his sister, because she probably strong-armed him into this marriage. Tefana tells him that they've already performed love's first joint task, and Cain thinks she's going to be giving everyone a misunderstanding. However, her brother knows better than anyone how lonely and stupid his sister is. Cain is glad he isn't the only one with some sanity, and the gods think that Cain truly never changes. The god of magic wonders why Zinum chose to double all of his protections, and Zium tells him that he needs to become even stronger. Aaron's seal will be broken soon, and the world will be in trouble when that happens. It's been 300 years since he was sealed, so Cain needs to be trained even more before Aaron comes to destroy the world's peace. There is only one way to train Cain, and all the gods agree to have Cain train underneath the mysterious man. After oversleeping on the day of his exam, Sylvia breaks in and panics because she didn't wake him up early enough, so she offers her maid milkers for breakfast. However, Cain runs away and she cries because he only likes mommy milkers, but he tells her that he'll drink her milk later. He teleports to the exam site, and while walking to class, he wonders why Telestia and Silk weren't taking the exam with him. The teacher begins the 2-hour exam, but with Cain's previous knowledge from the other world, he finishes all of it within 30 minutes and sleeps for the rest. After the written exam was over, the teacher took them to the field for their magic assessment. They will be shooting their strongest spell at the target, and she tells them not to worry because there is a defensive barrier around the training area. The other kids begin shooting their fireballs, and Cain realizes that he can't use his ultimate Inferno ability, so when she calls him up, he casts a simple fireball that turns blue. Even the teacher hasn't seen this level of magic before and tries to stop him. But Cain launches his fireball towards the target, annihilating the entire field for kilometers. He thought it would be safe to use beginner-level spells at full power since there's a barrier, but the teacher thinks it's impossible for someone to be this strong when they're this young. She rushes to make sure no one was harmed and tells them to begin the swordsmanship exam for now. At the new field, the professor introduces the adventurers who will be conducting the exam, and Cain notices Claude is one of them. He wonders what Cain is doing here and decides to duel him, saying he's just trying to assess his abilities. Knowing that he's an A-level adventurer, Cain activates his boost ability and rushes towards Claude. They clash against one another and Cain parries every single one of his attacks. While they continue sparring, Cain begs Claude to relax since he would have destroyed any other student. But Claude is enjoying this and activates his boost ability, even with his enhanced speed. Cain manages to fend off all of his attacks, but worries that he'd break the other kids' bones with his strikes. The teacher yells at them to stop their sparring because all of the kids have just pissed themselves. Claude realizes he's taken it too far and promises to have another sword fight with Cain later. But the teacher comes and tells him that the exam is over and that he should only come back for the results. Cain realizes how bad this is, but Claude pretends like he didn't cause a problem. At home, Sylvia asks him if he's ready for some maid milk, but Cain tries to ignore her and says he finished the exam and that everything went just right. She's happy to hear this and wants to give him some milk to celebrate this success, but Cain thinks he's not hungry. She gets angry because he's clearly lying and runs away crying to never be seen again. Inside the castle, the king asks Cain what he's done this time, and Cain says he's tired of always having to see his fat-ass face in this stinky room. He's so angry for constantly dealing with all this bullshit that he wanted to destroy the entire school and make the king pay for all of it. And if the king won't stop having these visits, then Cain will use his emperor-level magic to destroy his entire castle. The king tells him to shut up already and asks where he took the exam. Telestia and Silk didn't see him, and Cain remembers not seeing them either, saying he entered through the south gate and never saw any of them. The king asks Cain if he knew that the academy has 2 entrances, and Cain reveals that he knew the north one was for the nobles while the south one was for peasants. The king asks his dumbass which one he took, and Cain realizes he's been destroyed. He tells Cain to stop talking shit, and says that his father should have raised him better. He's caused so many problems that when the teacher approached the dupe to tell him about the incident, he knew it was Cain being the usual moron, and started laughing because he was going to destroy him with this information. After the count revealed the repair bill, Cain wished he was nicer to them now, so the king asks him who the ugly ass is again. The kings have enough of this little skit, and tells Cain to leave already. The day of the results arrives and Cain looks to see his ranking but can't find it anywhere. Silk runs in and congratulates him on being the top of their class. Her father had tried making fun of him for entering the wrong gate, but hearing how he destroyed the entire area made her want him to destroy her entire area. And since Telestia isn't here, they don't need to worry about her finding out, but Cain knows this will end poorly. At the entrance gate, Cain sees his sister, and she runs because she hasn't had any syscon developments in half a season, congratulating him on being the one to give this speech since he's the top of the class. He's never heard about this, but she just hugs him harder. Meanwhile, Sylvia is wondering if anyone's ever going to want her maid milk, and Cain finally arrives. She asks him if he wants some milk, but Cain wishes he didn't see her ugly ass again. His words crush her, but she hugs and congratulates him on passing to mask her feelings. She knew he would pass all along, so to celebrate, She's going to produce the best milk for him tonight. Cain wonders what the fuck is wrong with this post-menopausal bitch. The butler tries saying she's just happy, but Cain thinks that she'll never get a man like this. During the ceremony, Cain finally waves to the best mummy milkers in the entire kingdom. Rejuvenated, he charmingly asks Celestia and Silk to study with him throughout the years. He says that he will call them beautiful in front of their fathers again, and the girls look forward to it. Once the ceremony begins, all the guys are jealous of him, but all the girls want to feel him. The teacher calls Cain up to the stand in front of everyone. He admits that he mixed up the wrong entrances and took the commoner exam. However, he's a genius and knows how to twist this. He goes on to say that just like the first king, who wasn't actually useless like this current king, he believes that everyone should study and make friends equally. Regardless of bloodline or nobility status, he prays they can all get along together. Garm is glad that his child can twist every situation the same way he's about to twist Sarah's plot. The king overheard the slander and came to bully Cain in front of everyone. He congratulated them on being accepted, and is sure they won't be useless like this spineless dweeb next to him. The girls and the duke are glad that Cain is finally getting a taste of his own medicine, and the king goes on to apologize that they're going to be dealing with the failure that Garm raised. Little Sucker is finally getting what he deserved. The first class is finally going to begin, and Cain is late after crying in the bathroom for an hour. The teacher introduces herself and tells everyone to think about their future plan. Cain thinks he's going to be a free adventurer, and the girls are excited to accompany him on his adventure. He asks them what they're planning, and Celestia reveals that she's going to be studying internal affairs so she can manage his future kingdom. Silk thinks she will also study commerce to help his future domain. This is a straight-up slave harem. After class is over, Cain walks over to see Parma getting bullied by Habit and his lackeys. They make fun of her for being a commoner and tell her to drop out of the school right now. The knight in shining armor comes and tells them to treat everyone equally instead of picking on others. They realize it's Baron Cain, and he tells them that Parma is his friend, regardless of her nobility status. Habit thinks he will tell his father to ruin her entire family, but Silk tells him to repeat what they just said. Celestia wants to hear them too, and they realize they're screwed. She wonders if she should report their insolence to her father, but they apologize like the cockroaches they are and run away. Cain apologizes to Parma and asks to pet her cat ears, but the girls realize he's too close to the girl, so Silk commands him to sit on his heels. The poor married simp has already understood how life works, so he behaves like a good boy and wonders what they're talking about. However, as he realizes he should just get a divorce, a voice laughs in his head and asks him to come have a chat with him. The mysterious man is waiting inside the library and asks Cain to come inside. He gets up and goes to open the library door, getting teleported to a different dimension. The guy asks him if he would like coffee, but Cain wonders how this guy even knows what coffee is. The man tells Cain that he's been waiting for him this entire time, and that his name is Sheena. A mysterious man tells Cain that there's no need to be guarded after all. He knows that Xenom reincarnated him here. Cain wonders how he knows the gods, and the man finally introduces himself. He is Yuya, the first king of this country. Cain remembers reading all about him in the Emperor-level text, but wonders if he's a ghost since it's been 300 years. After inspecting him using judgment, he sees Yuya has the special title God of Creation. The world they're currently in is Fab Nail, and since Yuya created it, he's the god of creation of this world. Xenom and the rest of the gods wanted Cain to be trained, but he thinks that he's already the strongest person alive. Even with his power, however, Yuya asked Cain to try stealing the cookie. But as he leaped forward, Yuya unsheathed his sword to prevent Cain from moving. Cain wondered why he needed to be this strong, and Yuya told him that there's someone he needs to fight. 300 years ago, this person made all the people in the world fight each other. Using an oracle, he sowed the seeds of distrust among everyone, subconsciously forcing them to fight. That man is the evil god Aaron, and Yuya narrowly managed to seal him away 300 years ago. But recently, that seal has started to loosen, and since Yuya is a god of this world now, he can't interfere in that world, so it's all up to Cain. However, Yuya tells him that his previous life will come into play and teleports him to the middle of the ocean. He promises that he will teach Cain more if he completes the task and disappears. Cain begs him to tell him more right now, but Yuya only gives him a compass that points back to his mansion. His mission will be to level up to 600 if he even wants to stand a chance against Aaron, and since Cain is only level 300, he wonders what'll happen to his school if he will be gone for a long time. Yuya tells him not to worry since a year in this world is equal to one day there and disappears, but Cain begs him to wait a minute. Yuya teleports back, telling him he can either do it or don't. Teens realize that he has no other option, so he rushes into the forest. A serpent appears to attack Cain, but he dodges all of its attacks and rushes to slash the giant bear standing in his way. It has been less than 5 minutes, and he's already faced countless S-ranked beasts. Back in the other world, Sylvia panickingly opens the door to see Telestia and Silk. She apologizes for panicking because she hasn't seen Cain all day, but they tell her that they haven't seen him at school either. After hearing that, Sylvia worries he's been kidnapped or imprisoned or even stuck in a ditch, but Telestia tells them that he's fine because he always manages to find a way out of everything. If they wait here, she's sure he will eventually appear. A giant bear is about to devour Cain, but he annihilated it with his magic. It's been 4 months of being stuck in this forest without any sleep, so his mind is starting to break. He hears a puppy whimpering and begins walking towards the source of the noise. Once he arrives, he sees the tiny white puppy who's been injured badly and thinks that he will put it out of its misery. But as he raises his sword, he sees the look on the puppy's face and remembers that same sad look on the girls' faces. Cain drops his sword and apologizes for scaring it. After all, he's always just wanted to protect someone. He hugs it close and uses his extra heal, but since it's not enough, he puts every last bit of his mana into healing it, and passes out after consuming all of his energy. Hours later, the puppy defends him against all of the beasts, and Cain realizes that it was trying to protect him while he slept. The puppy jumps onto him and starts licking him. He sees that it's been alone all this time just like him, so he asks it if it would like to accompany him on his trip, and gave it the name Haku. It was the only sort of companionship that allowed him to continue moving forward, because no matter how bad things got, there was now someone he needed to protect, and so the years passed. Eventually, Cain finally made it to Yue's mansion, and Yue was surprised to see how much bigger he's gotten. It's been around 4 years, and he sees the Fenrir next to him, telling Cain that he's a legendary holy beast. If he's managed to gain his trust, Cain might be able to summon him at any time using a contract summon, so Cain gives it a try and Haku disappears. Yuya tells him he can summon him back at any time, but his training isn't over, and he will be practicing under his teacher, Durain. Cain is excited to have a new master, but he first wants to learn about Eren in his previous life. Yue remembers his promise and tells him that they will begin talking before he leaves. At the training site, Durain says that Cain isn't strong enough. Yuya is stronger than Durain, and since Eren is stronger than Yuya, Cain stands no chance. Cain tries boosting to hit Durain, but he instantly evades and delivers a devastating blow to Cain's guts, knocking him unconscious. He wakes up to a ceiling he's never seen before, and Haku comes to lick him. While going downstairs, Cain sees a hot elf girl, and she introduces herself as Ruri and promises to make him some food. The baby dragon sneezes and Cain rushes down to meet it, but Haku jumps on top of him out of jealousy. Why am I always getting déjà vu? Ruri's finished preparing the meal and Cain takes a bite, realizing he hasn't eaten something this good in years. Durain tells him to eat up as much as he wants, and Ruri tells him she can give him some elf milkers if he wants some too. While preparing though, Silk sighs in sadness, but Telestia tells her that she's sure Cain will be fine, so they should do their best to create something good for him. Sylvia tells them to hurry up and move their hands or her milkers will be the only ones that Cain gets to experience. The girls realize why this girl's never dated anyone. Durain continues beating Cain down, and he's glad that Cain's finally withstanding some hits. After months of this training, he's finally managing to get home on his own feet, and the baby dragon is still being at Sundeer. After a year of training, Cain was still being beaten down, but the anger of having to stop Eren kept him moving forward. He remembered the day when Yue revealed everything about his past life. Eren used to be the god of amusement, the 8th god of Zinum's world. The gods had asked Cain to make them a game because there's no more entertainment in this world. When Eren used the oracle, he was forcing every person to participate in a death game, and if he ever breaks the seal, he will end up forcing everyone to participate in this game once more. The only way Cain can prevent this is if he gets stronger, so Cain continued fighting to protect those who were important to him. But after all this time, Yue still had one thing left to tell him. He was the one who was unable to protect his friends. The reason Eren is connected to Cain's old life was because of this one reason. The friends Yue failed to protect were Cain's parents. After they died in an accident, they were reincarnated into Cain's new world and were begged by the gods to bring peace to this new world. But even as Cain's mother casted Inferno, she realized how ineffective her attacks were. Cain's father and Uia tried slashing against him and landed a scratch, but with a single magical blow, he annihilated their entire troop forces. Cain's mother tried protecting the priestess, but the injuries she sustained couldn't be healed. Cain's father used Overload to rush forward with all of his power and sacrificed himself to restrain Aaron from moving. In that instant, Uia used the stone to seal away Aaron. His parents' last words were apologizing to their son. After hearing their words, Cain knew that he wanted one thing. He wanted to protect the people he cared about and make this a peaceful world, so he used his Overload and defeated Durain once and for all. Durain congratulated him on finally finishing his training, and Cain ran towards his parents' graves. Uia reveals that even as they prepared for their final battle against Aaron, they were always looking for a way to get back to him. Cain's glad he finally found out the truth, thanking them for always thinking of him, and thanks Uia for looking after his parents. Uia opens his fist one final time, and Cain's speed surpasses Uia's. He thanks Uia for all the training, but Uia tells him that he was the one who put in all the work. He runs off to his old world, but Uia tells him to wait. His body's completely different after 5 years, so he casts a spell to return him to his original form. Haku appears to accompany him on his journey, and Durain asks him if he would be able to take Jin along with him. He promises that he will take care of Jin, and thanks them for taking care of him as he prepares to teleport to the other world. Uia hands him a gift for the current king. Durain looks forward to the day he becomes greater than both of them, but Uia is sure it will be soon. After all, he has something much greater to protect than they do, and there's also lots of people protecting him. Sylvia sees that Cain is finally back and rushes to give him some of her maid milkers. He tells her to get her lonely ass off of him because he didn't miss her one bit in those 5 years. He only missed Telestia and Silk, and they're glad he's finally back. They show him the cookies they prepared for him, and Cain cries while he starts eating them. They're glad he enjoyed them, and they welcome him home. The king reads the letter sent by the first king and wonders if this is truly from Uia. Cain reveals that Uia managed to create a different world and live there as the god of creation. Additionally, he gave Cain a gift for the king, and they are all shocked to see the legendary katana that slayed the black dragon. After seeing it, the king finally believes that Cain is telling the truth, but wonders what training this letter is referring to. Cain says that his training was long and rough, just like the spears his wife takes from other men at night. Every single day he had to fight against monsters and survive lethal mock battles for 5 long years. The king wonders if he heard that right and asks Cain how it could have been 5 years since he's still a small ugly. The Duke tells Cain that his useless ass forgot to accept the quest needed to advance to A rank, and his registration will be cancelled if he doesn't act on it. At the guild headquarters, Cain asks why the guild master wants to revoke his license and apologizes because he hasn't had any free days recently. The guild master tells him that Tefana was so bummed out that her bottled-up love might explode. Cain thinks it must suck to be her, because he only cares about his adventurer's license, so the guild master reminds him of the conditions of becoming an A-rank adventurer. Currently, there's about 10 bandits on the route from Gracia to the royal capital, and he needs to subjugate them to maintain his A rank, but it shouldn't be a problem since he's the strongest guy in the capital. Cain promises that he'll deal with it, and the guild master looks forward to seeing it happen. Inside the forest, Cain activates his flight to scan the area for the bandits, but eventually sees a carriage being ambushed by them. He flies down and says he'll help them out, but notices that it's Nina, Sabinos, and Millie here. She had been gravely injured, so Cain ran over and used his heal abilities to treat her wounds. The bandits think that one more child can't stop them since little kids should just be drinking from mommy milkers, but Cain says that he'll make them pay for harming his tutors. They rush towards him, and Cain activates his boost ability, knocking them off balance and destroying their core with his new katana. One by one, he takes care of all of them, and thinks holding back is really difficult. Sabinos thanks him for saving them, but Millie wonders why he's here. Cain says he accepted a subjugation quest from the guild, shocking her that he's able to take a C-rank quest, even though he just joined the guild. Cain shows them his adventurer card, and the girls are surprised that he's already a higher rank than them. Sabinos thinks this explains how he took out all the bandits, but wonders what they're going to do with them. As they drove the carriage throughout the capital, all the residents were disgusted by how vile those bandits must have been. They eventually made it to Sabino's home, and Parma came out to greet Cain, but was shocked to see all the bandits locked up. Her father explains that Cain saved them from all those bandits, and she thinks he's so cool for working even on the weekends like a proper baron. Millie is bamboozled that he's a baron now and worries that she's going to have to treat him differently. But Nina thinks he's every gold digger's dream now. However, Cain tells them not to worry about the formalities since they were his tutors after all, and Millie is glad to hear that he hasn't changed one bit. Since he's grown a lot in a few years, Millie goes on to unlock a new type of milkers for him, the tutor milkers. Cain thinks he just felt the best. He goes on to say that just like the first king, who wasn't actually useless like this current king, he believes that everyone should study and make friends equally. Regardless of bloodline or nobility status, he prays they can all get along together. Garm is glad that his child can twist every situation the same way he's about to twist Sarah's plot. The king overheard the slander and came to bully Cain in front of everyone. He congratulated them on being accepted, and is sure they won't be useless like this spineless dweeb next to him. The girls and the duke are glad that Cain is finally getting a taste of his own medicine, and the king goes on to apologize that they're going to be dealing with the failure that Garm raised. Little Sucker is finally getting what he deserved. The first class is finally going to begin, and Cain is late after crying in the bathroom for an hour. The teacher introduces herself and tells everyone to think about their future plan. Cain thinks he's going to be a free adventurer, and the girls are excited to accompany him on his adventure. He asks them what they're planning, and Celestia reveals that she's going to be studying internal affairs so she can manage his future kingdom. Silk thinks she will also study commerce to help his future domain. This is a straight-up slave harem. After class is over, Cain walks over to see Parma getting bullied by Habit and his lackeys. They make fun of her for being a commoner and tell her to drop out of the school right now. The knight in shining armor comes and tells them to treat everyone equally instead of picking on others. They realize it's Baron Cain, and he tells them that Parma is his friend, regardless of her nobility status. Habit thinks he will tell his father to ruin her entire family, but Silk tells them to repeat what they just said. Celestia wants to hear them too, and they realize they're screwed. She wonders if she should report their insolence to her father, but they apologize like the cockroaches they are and run away. Cain apologizes to Parma and asks to pet her cat ears, but the girls realize he's too close to the girl, so Silk commands him to sit on his heels. The poor married simp has already understood how life works, so he behaves like a good boy and wonders what they're talking about. However, as he realizes he should just get a divorce, a voice laughs in his head and asks him to come have a chat with him. The mysterious man is waiting inside the library and asks Cain to come inside. He gets up and goes to open the library door, getting teleported to a different dimension. The guy asks him if he would like coffee, but Cain wonders how this guy even knows what coffee is. The man tells Cain that he's been waiting for him this entire time, and that his name is Sheena. A mysterious man tells Cain that there's no need to be guarded after all. He knows that Xenom reincarnated him here. Cain wonders how he knows the gods, and the man finally introduces himself. He is Yuya, the first king of this country. Cain remembers reading all about him in the Emperor-level text, but wonders if he's a ghost since it's been 300 years. After inspecting him using judgment, he sees Yuya has the special title God of Creation. The world they're currently in is Fab Nail, and since Yuya created it, he's the god of creation of this world. Xenom and the rest of the gods wanted Cain to be trained, but he thinks that he's already the strongest person alive. Even with his power, however, Yuya asked Cain to try stealing the cookie. But as he leaped forward, Yuya unsheathed his sword to prevent Cain from moving. Cain wondered why he needed to be this strong, and Yuya told him that there's someone he needs to fight. 300 years ago, this person made all the people in the world fight each other. Using an oracle, he sowed the seeds of distrust among everyone, subconsciously forcing them to fight. That man is the evil god Aaron, and Yuya narrowly managed to seal him away 300 years ago. But recently, that seal has started to loosen, and since Yuya is a god of this world now, he can't interfere in that world, so it's all up to Cain. However, Yuya tells him that his previous life will come into play and teleports him to the middle of the ocean. He promises that he will teach Cain more if he completes the task and disappears. Cain begs him to tell him more right now, but Yuya only gives him a compass that points back to his mansion. His mission will be to level up to 600 if he even wants to stand a chance against Aaron. And since Cain is only level 300, he wonders what'll happen to his school if he will be gone for a long time. Yuya tells him not to worry since a year in this world is equal to one day there and disappears, but Cain begs him to wait a minute. Yuya teleports back, telling him he can either do it or don't. Teens realize that he has no other option, so he rushes into the forest. A serpent appears to attack Cain, but he dodges all of its attacks and rushes to slash the giant bear standing in his way. It has been less than 5 minutes, and he's already faced countless S-ranked beasts. Back in the other world, Sylvia panickingly opens the door to see Telestia and Silk. She apologizes for panicking because she hasn't seen Cain all day, but they tell her that they haven't seen him at school either. After hearing that, Sylvia worries he's been kidnapped or imprisoned or even stuck in a ditch, but Telestia tells them that he's fine because he always manages to find a way out of everything. If they wait here, she's sure he will eventually appear. A giant bear is about to devour Cain, but he annihilated it with his magic. It's been 4 months of being stuck in this forest without any sleep, so his mind is starting to break. He hears a puppy whimpering and begins walking towards the source of the noise. Once he arrives, he sees the tiny white puppy who's been injured badly and thinks that he will put it out of its misery. But as he raises his sword, he sees the look on the puppy's face and remembers that same sad look on the girls' faces. Cain drops his sword and apologizes for scaring it. After all, he's always just wanted to protect someone. He hugs it close and uses his extra heal, but since it's not enough, he puts every last bit of his mana into healing it, and passes out after consuming all of his energy. Hours later, the puppy defends him against all of the beasts, and Cain realizes that it was trying to protect him while he slept. The puppy jumps onto him and starts licking him. He sees that it's been alone all this time just like him, so he asks it if it would like to accompany him on his trip, and gave it the name Haku. It was the only sort of companionship that allowed him to continue moving forward, because no matter how bad things got, there was now someone he needed to protect, and so the years passed. Eventually, Cain finally made it to Yue's mansion, and Yue was surprised to see how much bigger he's gotten. It's been around 4 years, and he sees the Fenrir next to him, telling Cain that he's a legendary holy beast. If he's managed to gain his trust, Cain might be able to summon him at any time using a contract summon, so Cain gives it a try and Haku disappears. Yuya tells him he can summon him back at any time, but his training isn't over, and he will be practicing under his teacher, Durain. Cain is excited to have a new master, but he first wants to learn about Eren and his previous life. Yue remembers his promise and tells him that they will begin talking before he leaves. At the training site, Durain says that Cain isn't strong enough. Yuya is stronger than Durain, and since Eren is stronger than Yuya, Cain stands no chance. Cain tries boosting to hit Durain, but he instantly evades and delivers a devastating blow to Cain's guts, knocking him unconscious. He wakes up to a ceiling he's never seen before, and Haku comes to lick him. While going downstairs, Cain sees a hot elf girl, and she introduces herself as Ruri and promises to make him some food. The baby dragon sneezes and Cain rushes down to meet it, but Haku jumps on top of him out of jealousy. Why am I always getting déjà vu? Ruri's finished preparing the meal and Cain takes a bite, realizing he hasn't eaten something this good in years. Durain tells him to eat up as much as he wants, and Ruri tells him she can give him some elf milkers if he wants some too. While preparing though, Silk sighs in sadness, but Telestia tells her that she's sure Cain will be fine, so they should do their best to create something good for him. Sylvia tells them to hurry up and move their hands or her milkers will be the only ones that Cain gets to experience. The girls realize why this girl's never dated anyone. Durain continues beating Cain down, and he's glad that Cain's finally withstanding some hits. After months of this training, he's finally managing to get home on his own feet, and the baby dragon is still being at Sundeer. After a year of training, Cain was still being beaten down, but the anger of having to stop Eren kept him moving forward. He remembered the day when Yue revealed everything about his past life. Eren used to be the god of amusement, the 8th god of Zinum's world. The gods had asked Cain to make them a game because there's no more entertainment in this world. When Eren used the oracle, he was forcing every person to participate in a death game, and if he ever breaks the seal, he will end up forcing everyone to participate in this game once more. The only way Cain can prevent this is if he gets stronger, so Cain continued fighting to protect those who were important to him. But after all this time, Yue still had one thing left to tell him. He was the one who was unable to protect his friends. The reason Eren is connected to Cain's old life was because of this one reason. The friends Yue failed to protect were Cain's parents. After they died in an accident, they were reincarnated into Cain's new world and were begged by the gods to bring peace to this new world. But even as Cain's mother casted Inferno, she realized how ineffective her attacks were. Cain's father and Yuya tried slashing against him, and landed a scratch, but with a single magical blow, he annihilated their entire troop forces. Cain's mother tried protecting the priestess, but the injuries she sustained couldn't be healed. Cain's father used overload to rush forward with all of his power and sacrificed himself to restrain Aaron from moving. In that instant, Uia used the stone to seal away Aaron. His parents' last words were apologizing to their son. After hearing their words, Cain knew that he wanted one thing. He wanted to protect the people he cared about and make this a peaceful world, so he used his overload and defeated Durain once and for all. Durain congratulated him on finally finishing his training, and Cain ran towards his parents' graves. Uia reveals that even as they prepared for their final battle against Aaron, they were always looking for a way to get back to him. Cain's glad he finally found out the truth, thanking them for always thinking of him, and thanks Uia for looking after his parents. Uia opens his fist one final time, and Cain's speed surpasses Uia's. He thanks Uia for all the training, but Uia tells him that he was the one who put in all the work. He runs off to his old world, but Uia tells him to wait. His body's completely different after 5 years, so he casts a spell to return him to his original form. Haku appears to accompany him on his journey, and Durain asks him if he would be able to take Jin along with him. He promises that he will take care of Jin, and thanks them for taking care of him as he prepares to teleport to the other world. Uia hands him a gift for the current king. Durain looks forward to the day he becomes greater than both of them, but Uia is sure it will be soon. After all, he has something much greater to protect than they do, and there's also lots of people protecting him. Sylvia sees that Cain is finally back and rushes to give him some of her maid milkers. He tells her to get her lonely ass off of him because he didn't miss her one bit in those 5 years. He only missed Telestia and Silk, and they're glad he's finally back. They show him the cookies they prepared for him, and Cain cries while he starts eating them. They're glad he enjoyed them, and they welcome him home. The king reads the letter sent by the first king and wonders if this is truly from Uia. Cain reveals that Uia managed to create a different world and live there as the god of creation. Additionally, he gave Cain a gift for the king, and they are all shocked to see the legendary katana that slayed the black dragon. After seeing it, the king finally believes that Cain is telling the truth, but wonders what training this letter is referring to. Cain says that his training was long and rough, just like the spears his wife takes from other men at night. Every single day he had to fight against monsters and survive lethal mock battles for 5 long years. The king wonders if he heard that right, and asks Cain how it could have been 5 years since he's still a small ugly. The Duke tells Cain that his useless ass forgot to accept the quest needed to advance to A rank, and his registration will be cancelled if he doesn't act on it. At the guild headquarters, Cain asks why the guild master wants to revoke his license and apologizes because he hasn't had any free days recently. The guild master tells him that Tefana was so bummed out that her bottled-up love might explode. Cain thinks it must suck to be her, because he only cares about his adventurer's license, so the guild master reminds him of the conditions of becoming an A-rank adventurer. Currently, there's about 10 bandits on the route from Gracia to the royal capital, and he needs to subjugate them to maintain his A rank, but it shouldn't be a problem since he's the strongest guy in the capital. Cain promises that he'll deal with it, and the guild master looks forward to seeing it happen. Inside the forest, Cain activates his flight to scan the area for the bandits, but eventually sees a carriage being ambushed by them. He flies down and says he'll help them out, but notices that it's Nina, Sabinos, and Millie here. She had been gravely injured, so Cain ran over and used his heal abilities to treat her wounds. The bandits think that one more child can't stop them since little kids should just be drinking from mommy milkers, but Cain says that he'll make them pay for harming his tutors. They rush towards him, and Cain activates his boost ability, knocking them off balance and destroying their core with his new katana. One by one, he takes care of all of them, and thinks holding back is really difficult. Sabinos thanks him for saving them, but Millie wonders why he's here. Cain says he accepted a subjugation quest from the guild, shocking her that he's able to take a C-rank quest, even though he just joined the guild. Cain shows them his adventurer card, and the girls are surprised that he's already a higher rank than them. Sabinos thinks this explains how he took out all the bandits, but wonders what they're going to do with them. As they drove the carriage throughout the capital, all the residents were disgusted by how vile those bandits must have been. They eventually made it to Sabina's home, and Parma came out to greet Cain, but was shocked to see all the bandits locked up. Her father explains that Cain saved them from all those bandits, and she thinks he's so cool for working even on the weekends like a proper baron. Millie is bamboozled that he's a baron now and worries that she's going to have to treat him differently. But Nina thinks he's every gold digger's dream now. However, Cain tells them not to worry about the formalities since they were his tutors after all, and Millie is glad to hear that he hasn't changed one bit. Since he's grown a lot in a few years, Millie goes on to unlock a new type of milkers for him, the tutor milkers. Cain thinks he just felt the best milkers in the land, but runs off to report to the guild without them. Inside the guild, Cain hands Risha the testimony that confirmed the bandits' subjugation. But as Risha was congratulating him, they tell Millie that they'll show her around the capital. But just before he's able to grab onto her, Cain's hand stops him. The bandit was ready to tell the kid to piss off, but they realized it was the kid from before, and collapsed at his aura. Claude came from behind, and Cain ran to greet him. He congratulated him on driving away those creeps, but Cain says he would do anything to protect his friends. This is the first time Claude's heard he has friends, and sees Millie and Nina. Cain wonders how he knows his teachers, and Claude reveals that Millie is his sister. They tell him that they're the ones who tutored Cain since he was 5, and Claude thinks this is an awesome celebration, so they should drink some juice. Together, they all drink some apple cider vinegar, and Millie tells them the story of how Cain saved them from all the bandits. Nina also reveals that he's already a rank, and Claude is shocked that he was able to catch up to him so quickly, but thinks it's not surprising since he was the only one to keep up with him in the exam. Hearing this baffles Millie, because her brother was the only person to ever make it to a rank using only his sword skills. Nina thinks it makes perfect sense since Cain is a baron who already has his own mansion and thinks he's every gold digger's dream. Claude was shocked that he was a baron and begs him not to charge him for his rudeness. But Cain screams at them to calm down, and Millie wonders how he was able to become so strong. Stumbling on his words, Cain realizes he can't just tell her that he was trained by the gods, but she thinks it shouldn't be surprising since he was able to kill a red dragon even as a little kid. Claude thinks Cain might be hacking for defeating an SS rank monster, but Millie and Nina go on to show them their magic bags. Rena wonders how much those bags hold, but Millie goes on to reveal that she's never had it filled. She laughs it off and asks Cain where he got those bags from and how much they actually hold. Nina reveals they could actually fit a mansion, and Rena realizes that those must be some National Treasure class items. She begs Cain and says she will do anything so he could create her one of those bags. Cain promises that he will, and Rena passes out, but Claude tells her that it's okay because she won't remember any of this tomorrow. Cain is glad to hear that she'll be fine, but remembers that he has school tomorrow and panics because he didn't attend at all last week. Claude wonders how he's fitting in, especially since he's already a baron, but Cain tries to cast off the topic. Nina feels bad for him, so she offers to hug him, but he runs away, and Claude thinks it's very apparent that Cain is going to be a computer science major. They notice Risha looking for someone and ask her what's happened, so she reveals that she's looking for a substitute teacher for tomorrow's adventure class. Claude realizes this could be the perfect opportunity and asks Risha to explain more. At class the next day, the teacher commands all the students to cast their magic towards the target. Cain thinks he's finally going to show off his incredible powers, but the teacher calls out his name and says that he's forbidden from using magic in this academy. All the teachers have also been notified of this because his beginner-level magic can destroy all the barriers. While spying on him, Claude's group see that Cain really can't fit in with all of them and thinks that it's up to them to give him a hand. During their next class, the teacher introduces the adventurers who will be assisting them, and all of his classmates instantly recognize them. Claude asks the class how many of them are adventurers, and sees that all of them have already become adventurers, so he asks all of them to take out their guild cards. Cain realizes he's screwed, and Claude asks him why he doesn't have a guild card, whispering to take it out already. Cain doesn't want to make all the others feel bad since he already has a gold card, and thinks they'll all be even more put off. All of them start glaring at him, and Cain says that he forgot it at home. Claude thinks that it's really disappointing, but tells him to make sure he never forgets it in the future. Millie noticed how they all stared at him, and Rena thinks he's definitely a computer science major instead of a quantumistics major. Claude tells everyone that they're going to be learning how to use Boost today. The students volunteer to start, and Cain thinks he's finally going to show off his abilities to Claude. However, he sees all the other students going before him, and sees the lines that formed. He was the only one left behind. However, this is all part of their plan, because they want to show how much stronger they are, and if Cain manages to keep up with them, all of the students will be stunned by his strength. This is their 700 IQ quantum ristics lecture. With Cain at the end of the line, he worried that he wouldn't have time to make it to the duel, but their turn finally arrived. They jumped towards each other and struck swords, but the bell rang to end class. The teacher stopped the class, and Cain begged for just an extra minute, but the teacher wouldn't allow it. Claude apologized and promised to battle him next time, but the teacher said there won't be a next time. After all, Cain blew away all this episode's budget after he unlocked a new type of milkers. Cain wishes this didn't have to happen because it's not like he wanted a new type of milkers, and Claude tells him goodbye. At night, Cain takes out his anger by blowing up all the trees. A giant dragon approaches him, but Cain slashes it with a single blow. He sees a giant boulder standing before him and casts hundreds of fireballs towards the ground. The guards think it's the god of destruction that has been released, and Garm leads the army towards the source. Cain's managed to calm down and teleports out, and as Garm makes it to the crater, he sees his emblem once more. We're back at it fucking again inside the king's room, and he tells him that his worthless father thought the god of destruction appeared after the entire forest was scorched. He wonders if he's received a warning from the gods, and he tries to explain the situation, but the king tells him to hurry up and spit it out. Cain cries because he didn't come up with a comeback for today. Far in the distance, a goblin sees an orb, but a dragon eats him. After devouring the stone, the seal has finally weakened, and even though he just consumed a single part of his body, it should be more than enough. At school, the teacher reveals that they will be learning summoning magic today, and asks if Cain is among them. Cain realizes it's his cue to fuck off, but the teacher says that he can stay here since they're not going to be using attack magic, and she introduces them to the specialist of the day. He is a palace mage called Grat, and he explains the two types of summoning magic. The first is to establish a bond with a monster and form a contract with it, while the other method is to summon a monster from a magical sigil and form a contract. Since there aren't any wild monsters around, they'll be using magic circles to perform the summoning today. He gives all the students magic sigils, and they quickly summon their familiars. One of them summons a giant beast. The beast thinks he's trying to rip off Mash with his mushroom haircut, so it rejects him. Grat tells him not to worry because he can at least use magic unlike Mash, but he's probably going to stay ugly his whole life. Finally, Cain's turn comes up, and he asks if it's truly okay that he's going to put all his power into this summoning. Grat reassures him, saying they'll just leave if they're not interested in forming a contract, so he can put all of his magic into it. Cain's finally going to use all of his magical power, and activates the sigil with all of his mana. A blue light emanates with an intense aura, but Grat begs him to stop before it's too late. However, the summon has already appeared, and a strange man with horns wonders why a lowly human has summoned the Prince of Darkness. Immediately, Cain blinds everyone else, and he wonders if this man is truly the Prince of Darkness. The man casts a red flicker towards Cain, uncovering his status. He begins approaching Cain, so he draws his sword, but the prince immediately gets on his knees and apologizes, saying he will serve as the Chosen One's underling. He goes on to say that he will gladly form a summoning contract with Cain, and even destroy an entire nation with the Demon's clan if he so desires. Cain tells him that the only thing he wants to destroy is his mommy milkers, and he won't be needing an entire demon clan for it. The Prince of Darkness finds that admirable and introduces himself as Seth, saying he gladly agrees to be summoned by the Chosen One at any time. Cain is glad to hear his submission, but begs him to stop calling him the Chosen One. After hearing those words, the Prince of Darkness is shocked by Cain's humbleness and promises that he will destroy a nation at Cain's command. After he left, Grat wonders if he just heard the name Prince of Darkness, but Cain says he was too powerful so he couldn't form a contract. They decide to just go along with that story, and Cain is glad that he covered it up, but he was back at the king's room for the 69th time. The king told Cain that he was tired of having to roast him every episode, so he just asks him what he summoned at school today. Cain reveals that he summoned a demon, but the king tells him he was born at night, not last night, so he tells him to say the truth already. Cain confesses it was the Prince of Darkness, and the entire room panics. The king knows he wouldn't just send him back, so Cain explains that he also formed a contract with him. All of them get a heart attack, and the king can't believe that Cain's ugly ass was blessed with the power to destroy an entire nation, along with his daughter. Cain apologizes because it's not his fault his daughter calls him daddy instead of her actual father. Grat is new to these roasts, so he wonders how he's allowed to talk to the king this way. The king thinks that Cain's training with the first king has made him much more disrespectful, so he asks Cain to show his insane status window. He tells Grat that he's going to find out who the real top G of the nation is, so he'll be executed if he spreads this secret. After he opens his status, all of them scream in shock. He's gained the demigod title and his status has become immeasurable. Grat bows down and promises to roast the king along with him, but Cain says he can handle the ugly king alone. All of them consider calling him master from now on, and the king is afraid because he has the power to destroy the entire world. Cain tells them to relax already and wishes for them to treat him as they always have. The king agrees to continue treating him like shit, but thinks that with this status, he might hand him the entire kingdom if he wished it. After his blood pressure had skyrocketed, he tells Grat that this is the reason he allows Cain to roast him, and for Cain, he's going to bestow a town onto him. The way the king sees it, a man who cannot protect a single house or a single town can't hope to protect an entire nation. Sylvia finds out about the news and congratulates him, saying she will finally give him the best maid milkers he's been wanting. Cain tells her to shut the fuck up already because that joke is getting old, but Sylvia tells him she's going to give him her milkers whether he likes it or not. The butler comes in to stop her madness and informs him that Garm's town is about to be attacked by the forest of monsters. Inside the town, all the residents prepare to evacuate, so Cain goes to meet with Jin. His brother explains how the number of monsters in the forest have been growing, and some of them are even too powerful to hold off. Their power is beginning to resemble the forces that attacked their city a decade ago. So he sent out an entire party to investigate the source, but they were unable to confirm whether it's an onslaught or just a small increase in monsters. Because of this, they can't send knights on a massive scale, so they're trying to handle it carefully. After learning all of this, Cain volunteers to head into the forest, but Jin thinks he's too young to be doing this, so to put him in his place, Cain flashes his card and reminds him that he defeated a red dragon alone. Jin is glad that he has such a powerful brother, so he asks him to help them out in this investigation. But Cain says he will be visiting the Adventurers Guild to see what they think first. Inside the guild, the new receptionist thinks they're short-handed for hiring a kid, but screams when she sees his rank. Rocks in, Rudy apologizes for the new rookie's rudeness and welcomes him back, wondering what brings him here today. His brother had informed him that the forest is under trouble, and she tells him that all of the adventurers have been returning with severe injuries after venturing inside. Millie and Nina come inside, and Cain is glad to see them again. By them, I mean those two. He wonders what brings them here and never fails to keep eye contact. Nina says they were called by the guild to create a strong party that will infiltrate the forest. Cain pretends to be sad so he can get a better angle, and Millie says that her brother and his wife will be joining them soon. Cain tells Rudy that he's going to investigate the forest alone, but Rudy begs him to bring someone along with him, so he tells her that he definitely has some companions. Inside the forest, he summons his two pets who begin licking him, but they remember that they are actually tsunders, and Cain feels an ominous presence surrounding them. His search ability fails, and as he slays monsters, he continues feeling that something is watching all of his moves. He decides to summon the Prince of Darkness, and Seth gets on his knees to serve his master. Cain asks Seth if he could investigate the forest and asks him if he feels something weird about it. After feeling the air, Seth senses an overwhelming presence with a massive number of monsters surrounding him. Even though forests might have a lot of monsters, this is not normal, especially with how high level they are. To learn more, Seth asks Cain if he could summon a subordinate to help him out. After gaining his permission, Seth summons Dalmatia, and he notices Cain standing behind him, shocked that Seth's formed a contract with the gods chosen. Dalmatia gets on his knees to serve him instead of Batman, but Cain tells him to just shut the fuck up with the references and investigate the forest already. Seth reveals that Dalmatia was one of the 4 heavenly kings and specializes in investigations. He promises to take care of it and opens a pit of cockroaches to search the forest. Cain is afraid and begs him to close it, so Dalmatia releases them away from Cain. They help him locate the numerous monsters lurking around them, and Cain begins taking them all down with a single strike. Dalmatia is shocked that this is the power of the gods chosen and fears that he could have eliminated them in an instant. Cain teleports back to town, and Millie and Nina are shocked to see all the A and its S rank monsters. Claude appears and they wonder where they found all those monsters, so Cain reveals they were all in the forest. But there's even stronger ones deeper inside. Dalmatia's insects have located something trying to intimidate them, saying don't come any closer. However, Seth won't allow anyone to intimidate him, so he asks Dalmatia if he's gone rusty. They're going to be infiltrating the enemy defenses, and he tells Dalmatia to think of this as physical conditioning to keep his old muscles strong. As they begin reaching the source of the monsters, Aaron's eye spots them and he releases all of the monsters to devour the humans. Thousands of monsters begin rushing towards the town, and Seth teleports to Cain's location, saying that the onslaught of monsters has begun. Cain tells Rudy to inform everyone and tells Claude to assemble the adventurers so he can keep the monsters from going into town. Rudy says it's too dangerous for him to go out alone, but Cain says that he has friends that are stronger than a rank adventurer. Seth is shocked that he's made his first friend in years, so he pledges to lay down his life to assist him. They begin running towards the forest, but Tefan appears and jumps towards her husband, saying she was informed about the onslaught that's begun. Cain says he's on his way into the forest, and before she's about to follow him, Cain tells her to stay and protect the town along with his home. Typhana promises that she'll do anything to protect her husband's home, and Cain runs off. As they ran together, Seth wondered why he wasn't teleporting, so Cain reveals that no one in this nation except him can teleport, so he begs Seth to show some restraint. Meanwhile, Dalmatia is single-handedly destroying all the dragons that appear, and when one of them flanks him, a giant flame saves him. Cain casts multiple infernos to destroy the monsters beneath him, and feels the overwhelming presence coming from the center of the forest. Aaron says he's waiting for the followers of the old Geezers, and says that the game has already begun. The monsters continued rampaging the forest, but Seth promised Cain that he will take care of them while he faced off against their leader. He told Cain that he will summon his underlings, but couldn't promise that the forest would remain intact, so Cain told him to be careful and to not take it too far. However, Seth told him that he should be the one being careful, and Cain smiled before flying off. The earth began quaking, and the army was struggling to protect all of the people as they ran inside the town's walls. Using her search ability, Nina noticed the large number of monsters approaching. So Millie began running towards the forest, saying that she wants to do everything in her power to act like a teacher just for once. Nina began running after her, so Claude and his wife started chasing them, and together, they set off to help Cain. While battling the monsters, Seth summoned his loyal subjects, and they wondered why he would summon the 4 heavenly kings. But notice the ongoing chaos. Seth reveals that his only friend in life has requested for his help, and the kings are shocked to hear that Seth has managed to make a friend. Dalmatia says he was just as shocked to hear how Seth's loser ass managed to create a friend, and he went on to reveal that Seth had created a contract with him, shocking the 4 kings. They wonder how a person could possess so much power in order to form a contract with the Prince of Darkness. So Dalmatia revealed that the man is the great demigod, the one who is God's chosen. Seth promises that he'll explain everything later, but needs their help in the meantime, so they all rush in to assist him in fighting off the monsters. Meanwhile, Cain flies around while casting his inferno to rain fire onto the battlefield. The fire torpedoes begin annihilating all of the enemies, but a large purple blast shoots towards him that he narrowly evades. A second stream is launched, but Cain manages to cast inferno to block it off. Once it settles, Cain finally sees the black dragon and realizes that it's Aaron, the former god of amusement. Aaron powers up, saying it's a shame that only part of him has been revived because he had to borrow the body of the dragon, so he casts his magical powers to unleash more monsters towards the city. All of this is a game to him to see if the monsters would be able to devour all the humans, and wonders how long his friends would be able to survive. On the other side of the forest, Claude notices the people floating in the air, but his wife tells him to stop joking. He tells her the only thing funnier than this joke is going to be when he cheats on her toxic ass, but all of them see the people floating in the sky. They realize that they must be on their side, and Nina thinks they're likely Cain's overpowered friends. The 4 heavenly kings begin getting overwhelmed, but Seth tells them to continue battling so they could make the fight easier for the humans. Nina casts her search ability, and notices that they are about to be surrounded, so Millie rushes forward with her brother to fight off the oncoming beasts. Cain faces off against Aaron, and the god of amusement finds it infuriating how his eyes are the same as the people who sealed him. The lingering regret of him being sealed had made him want to cause Cain to suffer for years, but decides that he will just end him at this moment, so he casts his dragon breath towards him. Cain narrowly evades, and notices the power of his attack, and how it turned all the cockroaches into sushi by just touching them. Aaron casts his breath once more, but as the flames begin to chase after him, Cain leaps backwards and casts his inferno spell towards the dragon. The flames, however, don't leave a single scratch on Aaron, and he says that such weak magic isn't going to affect him. Meanwhile, Cain's friends begin getting overwhelmed by all the forces. However, Claude is excited because he's going to cheat on his wife after, and Millie can't wait until she can finally give Cain her milkers. Aaron's attacks pursue Cain, and while he flies, he summons Haku and Jin to fight off against. They evade each of his attacks, but Aaron's tail whip sends Haku falling unconscious and prepares a lethal attack. Nina runs out of all of her magic, and Claude gets held at a standstill along with Millie. Just after Nina managed to eliminate it, a giant beast appeared and was ready to devour Claude. However, iron spears pierced through its head, and Tefana appeared to save Millie. She told them that reinforcements are here, and from this point on, she will be defending the front line. Claude thanked her, but said that he won't let her do it alone because that's what his good friend always says. Haku receives a devastating blow that Jin tries to block off, and Aaron prepares another blow to burn them in their place, calling it annoying how Cain wants to save them. However, Cain rushes down to block his attack from burning them, saying that they're his friends that he'll protect. Because if you love someone, you should protect them, and this sentiment could never be annoying. This isn't the God's will, this is his will, because the only thing he wants is for everyone to be able to smile and activates his overload ability. Aaron recognizes this light as the same one from before, and Cain unleashes his Saint Sanctuary with the sole wish of protecting everyone. Their blasts hold each other off, but Cain screams with all of his might, and his magical powers begin to overwhelm Aaron. The light emanates as it ascends to the heavens, and Cain says that he's going to protect all of their smiles, and begs his mom and dad to give him more power. Haku and Jin bite him to stop his attack, and Seth and Dalmatia think it's awful how he's acting. They wonder if it was really necessary for him to destroy an entire mile of fertile earth, but Cain thinks that he was just trying to destroy the black dragon. They ask him where he sees a black dragon, and they tell him to quit being stupid because the monsters had finally left the forest, and the onslaught is over now thanks to him. Claude runs to hug Cain, but Tefana rushes over and Millie hugs him closer. Here in this world, Cain thinks he can help people and Dalmatia thinks he is a remarkable God's chosen. They laugh it off before leaving and think he'll be one of the greatest men. Back at the king's room, the ugly bastard realizes this is the final, so he decides to roast Cain extra hard this time. He yells at him while asking him about the pillar of light that was visible from the castle and wonders if his little head was the one responsible. Cain tried explaining that the pillar of light was supposed to penetrate the black dragon like he's going to penetrate. He apologized because his intermediate magic wasn't enough, so he had to use royal level magic to royally fuck. The king tries yelling at him, but realizes that he didn't prepare a comeback, and Cain says that's probably because his daughter knows who her real daddy is. The king is completely clapped and thinks he's finally given up, admitting defeat. After all, he's going to be marrying his daughter anyway, and wonders what he could give him for his victory. The count says he could give him a domain, so the king decides that he will reward him for his exploits with a domain of his own. Cain appears before the king in front of everyone, and says that the only thing he will be exploiting is his daughter. The king bestows upon him the domain Durantol, and Cain humbly accepts to govern it. Back at Garm's home, he wishes it was any other domain, but Tefana hugs him in tears. She reveals that Durantol is the worst town because their corrupt adventurers' guild has driven many previous nobles to flee from it. Telestia thinks it's cruel and wants to yell at her father, but Cain tells her that this actually excites him because he wants to repair a broken town and allow everyone to smile. He wishes for all of them to rebuild it with him, so all of them agree, but tell him not to overdo it. And so together, they set off to build the new domain. As he entered the city, the guard instantly saw his high rank, and the clapped king asked his messenger about what happened to Cain. Shortly after arriving, the guild was holding a welcome party for him, but Cain took care of them with ease using his fire powers. And while he was in the tavern, he noticed how the men mistreated a cat girl, so he showed them who the real loser are by kicking them out and having them land in interesting positions. However, he was locked up by 12, but Cain got out easily. As he was talking to his future wives, Seth came screaming for help and revealed that his wife had learned of his cheating and kicked him out of the castle. His demon wife appears, Lefane, and a new type of milker has been unlocked, the demon milkers. Cain introduces himself back, and she asks him what he thinks of her man. So Cain tells her that he's worthless scum for cheating on an unparalleled beauty. Hearing those words makes her want to be part of his harem. But Seth told him to be careful since women change after marriage. Telestia thinks that Seth likely used to say all kinds of sweet stuff when they exchanged vows, so betrayal is unforgivable, but Cain wonders why it feels like they're talking about him. Lefane praises the girls for telling her exactly what she wanted to hear, so she promises that if Cain ever made them cry, she would make him regret it. Lefane told Seth that he can come back home just this once, so she shows him what true hell looks like, and Seth bids Cain goodbye. He was never seen again. Eventually, Cain stormed into the church and uncovered the cult running the city, so he subdued all of them with ease and built a giant wall around the entire city. Ziam thinks it's great because they still have many things they need him to do. Typhon and the girls were shocked that he was building a castle even bigger than the king's, but the young Chad laughed it off because he knows he's bigger than the king in more ways than one. They wondered why this was necessary, and Cain thought it was because he reincarnated into this world with all his past memories and became an off-the-charts noble with level 10 protections. But that's a story for next time. All of his friends were angry with him, especially Sylvia because she still hasn't given him maid milkers. But Cain apologized,